World Trade Organization. The World Trade Organization, again, its sheer survival is based on the exploitation of the African continent. Africa is supposed to provide raw material to the Western world to perpetuity. Without Africa, European nations would not survive. So it is they put together policies that allow them to make it very difficult for Africans to add value to our raw materials. Have you ever wondered why is it that you go to a lot of hotels and restaurants, you're going to be drinking Swiss coffee, you're going to be eating Swiss chocolates, and yet there's not a single cocoa plantation in Switzerland. There isn't a single tea plantation in Switzerland. Why is the World Trade Organization giving a blind eye to such abuses? And this time they did it even better. They put one of our own on there. What's your problem? Problem solved. One of you is over there. She's not going to make a bit of a difference because those policies were put in place a long time ago with a clean agenda to make sure that we are forever providing them raw materials and creating jobs for them. It's only recently that Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, the largest producers of cocoa in the world, 6% of the cocoa comes from West Africa. They only started producing chocolates, not even 5 years ago. Because why? If they tried to add value to their cocoa, the tariffs that were put on the value-added products were so high that it wasn't even worth pursuing it. So the World Trade Organization is another issue of the root. That until we dismantle the World Trade Organization and their policies, until we dismantle the geopolitical systems, until we dismantle the world financial systems, the Bretton Woods institutions, our abilities to move forward are forever going to be hindered. The average African country, in some cases 60% of their GDP on loan repayment. How on earth can a country survive? And they turn around and look at you, equate to, you're taking my lunch every day. And at the end of the day, you look at me and say, why are you so thin? I equate to, you come to my house and you burn my house down, and then you turn around and say, why are you homeless? The abuse of Africa is so blatant. It's mind-boggling to think that in 2023, those abuses are still being systematically meted to us, and we seem to be totally incapable of fighting back. Let's use an egregious one that I speak to quite often. When you look at the fact that to this day, as we speak, our ancestors' remains are in jars in basements throughout Europe. Why do we engage these people? I'm supposed to have meetings with you, and I know in this building where I'm sitting in, the ancestors are in jars somewhere. And the reason you don't want to bring them back for proper burial is because you classified them as trophies of conquest. You see, you go to Africa, you kill a lion head, that's your trophy. You go to Africa, you kill a human being, that's your trophy. That is their arguments in the courts. They're trophies of conquest. My brothers and sisters, doesn't that just make you sick? But we still engage these people. What would it take to save every British citizen in this country? You got 2 weeks to get out if Britain doesn't bring back our ancestors. Let them be the one to run back and talk to Britain and say, hey, we love Uganda. We ain't leaving. You better bring those remains. But those conversations are not taking place. Look at our artifacts that were stolen in Africa. They were basically just taken. You see, when you steal something, at least you respect the other person. And you do it when they're not watching, because you're afraid they're going to beat you up. They didn't have to respect us, they just took it. We traveled throughout Europe, and we paid to see what belongs to us. What is keeping us from saying, I'm taking what belongs to me? I think you saw, some of you, that Nigerian who saw a Benin bronze in one of the museums in London, and he was trying to unscrew it. And he held on to it so tight, he says, I'm taking it, this is mine, and he was right. The video went viral, but man was right. How bad do things have to get before we, the Africans, have to get up and say enough is enough? We don't need them. The truth of the matter is the Western world needs Africa, and that is a fact, and they know it. But again, I go back to the reason we're unable to stand up and push back as effectively as we should is because we lost and are defeated at the Battle of the Marne. And finally, root cause number 6. Through slavery, the brain drain has been ongoing. Many left through slavery, and many more have left running away from wars, famine, climate change, in search of greener pastures. The bottom line is our Africa, as we speak, we simply have a serious capacity deficit. And that deficit, imagine if we could only repatriate the over 300 million African diaspora, the professionals with the financial know-how. If we can just organize them to understand that Africa is home, because they too have been lied to. Don't go to Africa, it's a diseased and dying continent. You'll die there. So they don't come to Africa. But they want to keep Africa as their own little secret. You fly from Europe, majority of the people in the planes don't look like you and I. Have you ever wondered, why are they coming here? Because there's something amazing and wonderful going on in Africa. The question is, do you and I understand that? We're too busy trying to get out of Africa in search of greener pastures that do not exist. My brothers and sisters, let's understand Africa's tree of life. Let's have a deep understanding of issues of the root. And let's not be allowed to waste time on issues above the ground. I'm not saying issues above the ground do not matter. Yes, they do. But understand why these fruits are not as juicy as they used to be is because of the issues of the root. So deal with the root. Understand why the leaves are dying one season after the other. Yes, we want to do something about it, but understand why. Look at the root. And when you understand the root causes of Africa's ailments, we will be in a better position to strategize and push back against the Western world and now the Eastern world that have systematically strategized on how to keep us where they want us to be so they can continue to exploit us to the fullest extent. I'm so glad to be here at Makerere speaking to the young bright minds that we have a responsibility as elders to teach them the truth and nothing but the truth. They are where they are today because we, the elders, have not told them the truth. I was talking to a lady in Zimbabwe and she was talking about, she has friends who don't even want their children to speak Shona. They want their children to speak English because it's embarrassing for them to speak Shona. The disease is deep. As elders, we have a responsibility to teach our children the truth, to remind them who they are, that they are the fathers and mothers of humanity, that you are the only one who cannot be destroyed. I often say to young people, if you all choose to start mating with those who don't look like you and I, give it 2 generations and the world will be black. Have you ever seen any other person who met with a non-black person and the child is that other color? The answer is no. Because our gene is the only one that is dominant. We are indestructible. And young people, I want you to know that. So don't you ever let anybody make you feel inferior because you are not. Without you, there will not be humanity as we know it. So let's let the world know once and for all. Those who are the mothers and fathers of humanity, those who are indestructible, those who gave humanity what it is, those who civilized the world, we have a responsibility to rebuild the Africa to where it once was, when we ruled the world and we civilized humanity. That Africa we can rebuild. We can recreate it. But for you to do so, you must be empowered with knowledge, with facts, with truth, constants that never change. You are all blessed to be led by a president who understands what it means to be Pan-African, who understands what it means to stand your ground and speak your truth and look them eyeball into eyeball and tell them to go to hell if they need to be told so. But understand why these fruits are not as juicy as they used to be is because of the issues of the root. So deal with the root. Understand why the leaves are dying one season after the other. Yes, we want to do something about it, but understand why. Look at the root. And when you understand the root causes of Africa's ailments, we will be in a better position to strategize and push back against the Western world and now the Eastern world that have systematically strategized on how to keep us where they want us to be so they can continue to exploit us to the fullest extent. And as usual, I find myself going back to the genesis and the root of why Africa is where it is today. I went back and started thinking about the African tree of life, reminding myself once again that this great continent was and is the mother of humanity as we know it, the mother of life as we know it. But the question then comes, what happened to this beautiful, once vibrant African tree of life? I couldn't help but go back to when the invaders from the West came and found an amazing, indestructible continent with everything and anything they could think of. And they wondered how on earth they were going to conquer such a people. So they decided to put in place certain fundamental root causes of what set the path for Africa's destruction. Today, the same people who set out the stage on how to destroy us systematically, they want you to believe that your great continent is a lost cause. And yet they know very well that everything and anything they need and is being found in Africa. They tell you about how diseased and dying Africans are. They tell you about Africans are in need of help, they need to be saved. They talk to you about poor health care, poor education, poor infrastructure, everything that they themselves set in motion to make sure that our abilities to get to where we need to be are forever defeated. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about the issues above the root of the African tree of life, which is now ailing. Those issues are the leaves and the branches and the fruits and the flowers that come and go one season after the other. And they want us to bury our heads worrying and fighting about those issues about the root. What they don't want us to pay attention are the issues below the root. Let me start by what I feel is the fundamental issue below the root. Because if you don't understand issues below the issues of the root on this African tree of life, we will forever be fighting over issues above the ground on this African tree of life. Issue number one. When the missionaries were coming to Africa, some of you got a chance on Monday to see what I circulated, which was the King Leopold letter, which is a how-to letter instructing the missionaries how to systematically brainwash the African. They were instructed to teach the Africans how to read but not to reason. They were systematically trained to abuse and mistreat Africans in a systematic way in order to beat them into submission. They used religion to brainwash us. Willie Lynch, in his training and training other slave owners in the Americas, he said, be sure to let them keep their bodies, but take the mind. Because once you control the mind, you put them on an automatic pathway of generational stability and self-destruction. So they masterminded a plan to brain us. To this day, we continue to suffer that legacy of colonization where we don't believe we're as good as anybody else. We don't believe that we can perform to the same extent as those who don't look like us do. We find us amongst others who don't look like us automatically feel inferior. This has been going on for centuries. The mind is where they defeated us. And it is the mind that the battle of our true liberation must begin. And for that to happen, first and foremost, you must accept that you're sick from this ailment. Legacy of colonization and outside Africa, the legacy of slavery. We must have a serious conversation with the image in the mirror and begin to understand that you feel the way you do because you were systematically put in the position that you're in today. I don't know how many of you have seen a video that has gone around of a young black 5-year-old was given 5 black dolls and 5 white dolls and was asked which one is ugly, and he pointed at the black one. He was asked which one is beautiful, pointed at the white one. Which one is mean? He pointed at the black one. Which one is nice? He pointed at the white one. He was then asked which one looks more like you, and reluctantly he pointed at the black one. 5-year-old boy defeated before the game even began. I do know for a fact, no self-respecting mother, father, aunt, uncle, brother, neighbor would never look at a black child and say you're ugly, that you're mean, that you're not good enough. But there's something in the air, subliminal messaging, that we just know that we're not good enough. No one should ever let us feel inferior, for we are the mothers and fathers of humanity. Without the black woman, there would not be life, humanity as we know it. And that is a fact. And another reason they also felt that were thoroughly defeated when they came to Africa, they also came to realize that the African gene, the gene for blackness, is the only dominant gene on earth. Now that's what really scared the hell out of them. So no matter what you do, we are totally indestructible, and they know it. Yes. As a matter of fact, if the truth be told, with these increases, they are decreasing birth rates. More and more women who are having abortions are of a different color than us. And all the other gender issues that are coming up, their reproductive rates are going down. There actually is a date by which some races, I shall not name them, will be extinct. And they know it. So the fear of the black man, the fear of the black woman is real because they know we are indestructible. But once we know all those facts, why then do we continue to feel inferior when in fact we should be standing on the tallest pedestal and proclaim to the world who we are: the proud, the beautiful, intelligent, sophisticated, highly adaptable, and above all, totally indestructible. So issue of the root pertaining to this African tree of life is the mind. The second issue of the root, after they had started a program of colonizing us and making us feel inferior to them, making us believe everything African was bad and undesirable, they sought out to divide us into tiny little economies. Because as powerful kingdoms, we were dangerous for them. They could not defeat us if we continued to be powerful. So they all gathered together, because also at that time they started beginning to fight each other. You see, they were looting from the Africans. They were taking whatever they could grab. But pretty soon, in no time, they were now fighting each other over the loot that they would have looted from the Africans. So realizing that they were getting ready to have a European war on the African soil, the Chancellor of Germany, Bismarck, at that time, He called on all the colonizers and said, let's meet in Berlin. Let's strategize on how to effectively destroy these people and how to effectively conquer them. So it is from November of 1884 to February of 1885, they sat in this cold Berlin winter, strategizing how to effectively and to perpetuity in their mind, destroy the African continent. They chopped us into the tiny little economies that we are today. The larger and more powerful a kingdom was, the more smaller countries that came out of that kingdom. And more importantly, each country was designed in a way that they will divide kingdoms that were once one into various countries that spoke different languages. Picture yourself driving from, let's say, Zambia. You're speaking English. Pretty soon you're in the DRC. You're speaking French. Keep going up north. You're now in Cameroon. One part is English, and the other part is French. Before you know it, you are now in Nigeria. You're speaking English. You keep going. Oh, don't forget, we passed Equatorial Guinea. You're speaking Spanish. It was all by design to maximally destroy the continent. And people who were once family, give it a couple of generations, they don't even know they are related. So the Berlin Conference was designed to systematically destroy Africa and put us in a position that we will forever be chasing our tails to this day. How on earth do you expect Eswatini, with 2 million people, to go to the world stage and trade and negotiate with China? How on earth do you expect Gabon, with 1.5 million people, to go to the world stage and trade and negotiate as equals? European Union. It was all by design to make sure that we are forever defeated. They come to you and talk about globalization. We are all equal when we go to the United Nations. But some people are more equal than others. But the reality is, let's watch out for globalization. Watch out for globalization. For when you go to the world, we are little bitty economies that are forever defeated. So the Berlin Conference, by dividing Africa into the tiny little countries, we are on a defeated path. As tiny little economies, we can never survive. What Africa needs is what our Pan-African fathers wanted to do in 1963 when they failed to create an Africa that spoke with one voice, an Africa that had its own military, an Africa that had one stock exchange, an Africa with one monetary policy, an Africa with one currency. We failed. But until we accomplish the creation of an Africa that speaks with one voice, until we accomplish the destruction of the Berlin Conference, as we speak today, what they masterminded from 1884 to 1885 during the Berlin Conference, it remains alive and well. Quite often after I speak, I had young people coming to me and say, but Ambassador, we can't keep talking about the Berlin Conference. It's a thing of the past. Think again. As long as Africa remains divided, Berlin Conference is alive and well. Hello. So the Berlin Conference is second issue of the root causes as to why the African tree of life continues to err. And then when it came to giving us quote-unquote independence, I call it limited in liberation. They gave us political liberation. Again, even that is limited. They use their invisible hands to make sure that they mess with our elections. They send NGOs who come in and give you peanuts and frivolous gifts in the name of doing a social service when actually they have a deeper ulterior motive. Watch out for those NGOs. Majority do not mean any good for Africa. Don't let those fake smiles fool you. They play games. They manipulate us. They know we are afraid of them. They know we fear them. And so they get away with murder. So in the names of saying they're leaving Africa, they're giving us the independence, what they never gave us when African nations were getting their liberation was economic liberation. The multinationals who existed during colonization, they continue to be alive and well in Africa today. They control most of the economies of many African countries to this day. They're siphoning billions of dollars out of Africa every year. They use safe havens to hide taxes so they don't pay. They're involved in illegal mining, in illegal trade, illegal lumbering, exotic plants and animals. Anything they can get out of Africa, they're taking it. The multinationals who refuse to pay social corporate responsibility funds. Many communities across Africa are owed trillions of dollars by these multinationals who continue to exploit the continent. Issue number 3 of the ailing African tree. Until we can address the multinationals, until we can begin to say Africa for the Africans at home and abroad, and put a system in place to begin to also own. We cannot continue to have our Africa owned by those who don't belong to the continent. And then, of course, after the Second World War, they had completely destroyed themselves. But just to show you that where there's a will, there's a way. Because the Western world was in shambles after the Second World War. Guess how long it took to create the Bretton Woods institutions? I'm talking about the World Bank, I'm talking about the IMF, and many other institutions. It took them 3 weeks. Because there was a need. 3 weeks they come up with the Bretton Woods institutions. But guess what? Those institutions were created with the understanding that their success is based on the failures of developing nations. Of course, the majority are in Africa. Africa alone, their sheer survival is based on our failure. So to this day, it is African countries that continue to pay 15, 20% interest rates on the funds that are loaned to them. Even economies that have never defaulted on their loans, their interest rates are exorbitant. And then you take countries like the United States, the printers of money, who never have to worry about how do I pay my bill. All they have to do is print more dollars. When they want to borrow money, it's 0 interest rate. Those who need help, they don't get it. Those who don't need help, they get it. I'm talking about the global financial systems that were created without including developing nations, majority being in Africa. And that was done intentionally. For without those developing nations paying those exorbitant rates, the Bretton Woods institutions may not survive. And what's something else that really kills me, when you now look at people who are being sent to Africa to sell policies that are detrimental to Africa's development, they look like you and I. They know what's going on, but they're being sent to Africa to tell their brothers, sell them policies that are detrimental to the development of their economies. That's issue number 4 of Africa's ailing tree. Then look at I'm having a senior moment.